Hey, hi everyone. Uh, Today let's discuss about the OWASP mobile top 3, that is insecure authentication and authorization, which is currently placed in number 3 when compared to 2016. So it was insecure authentication and authorizations were separate categories at number 4 and number 6 respectively. So if we talk about authentication and authorizations, these are fundamental pillars of any secure system, including mobile applications. So authentication is, if you talk about authentication, authentication identifies the identity of the users, ensuring that they are who they claim to be, while authorizations, they determine the level of access or the actions they perform within the system. Now, insecure authentication and authorization can lead to a multiple of risk, like including unauthorized access, data breaches, and compromised user accounts. Attackers exploit this kind of vulnerabilities to gain unauthorized entry. Then they manipulate the sensitive information or compromise the integrity of the entire application. So now let's take an example. And if we take an example of an insecure authentication, so let's consider a widely used e-commerce mobile application that allows users to browse their products, add them in their carts, and make purchases. So the application relies on simple authentication system where users input their email and password to log in. So this is a scenario. What happens as an attack? An attacker obtains a list of username and passwords. Uh, Usually they perform combinations of username and passwords from a data breach from another platform or the applications. Now leveraging on this list, they conduct a credential stuffing attack on this e-commerce applications. So now this application has a weak authentication control. So the attacker successfully gain access to multiple user accounts without being detected. So performing a brute force attack, now using the username password combinations, they are able to gain the access. Now what would be the consequence of this compromised accounts? So the attackers, with this unauthorized access to personal information, names, addresses, purchase history, so they gain all this kind of information. And additionally, since the authentication process lacks the um, we can say lacks improper security postures like multi-factor authentication or captcha or OTP. So this attackers can easily take control of the accounts, manipulate the orders, and make fraudulent purchases. And sometimes even without paying any single penny, they might uh, make purchases on behalf of the victimized users, right? So let's look at the areas where the mobile application can store the login information. Probably in our earlier videos we saw in our insecure data storage how the data are getting stored, usually in the shared preferences where the data is getting captured and is being stored in the plain text, like if there is no proper encryption mechanism within the application. So let me show that. Okay, let's suppose consider this as an application, and this is a login page. Let's consider this to be a login page where an user enters the username and the password for an application. So after doing a sign in, the application is then allows the users to log into the application. Now, considering this as to be in a login form or a login page, when we click on login, we would see that the username and passwords are getting stored in the shared preferences. So as we saw earlier, so let me show it to you. Going to IDV shell and then going to CD data, and the package name is the, so the package name is Dr. Rasim Diva. So I'll do an ls. So here you would see that there are multiple options of the cache database shared preference system 35 as we saw earlier. So we see that the data are getting stored in the shared preferences. So let me go to shared preferences, cd shared preferences, and do an ls. I would see that is an XML file. So if I read out this XML file, I would see that my username and password is clearly visible here, right? So I entered username as an user, password as a password. So this is clearly getting stored in the shared preferences. So this is a very bad practice of storing the credentials. If you are, we should not at least allow the applications to store the credential in a plain text. We should always encrypt it, and also we should also allow the application, or we should encourage the developer team to implement multi-factor authentication here, so that there will be a more secure combination. And also, if we should also always look out for the OTP if the application is uh, implementing a multi-factor authentication of an OTP. We should also check whether that OTP is valid only for that particular time window. It cannot be reused multiple times. And we should also check that the OTP, like if the subsequent OTPs are entered, then after 3 to 5 attempts the account should log out for a particular time window. So this has to be the secure posture that the development team should enable in their applications. Other than that, we should also check for the login attributes, probably in the username section, username and password. We should always check there is the attributes are set properly, and the injection that is I'm talking about the SQL injections should not be uh, successfully carried out by the attacker if there is no proper sanitization or validation uh, being present. So if I talk about on the username section, probably they can uh, uh, probably they can inject special characters or boolean based characters, the SQL queries or union SQL queries to inject and obtain the information of the users of the application. So probably here in this application, let me show you how it can be done. So probably we have a invalid input validation issues part one. So considering this as a login page or something. So here it is talk about in input validation issues wherein it is not validating the username during the search, but we can consider for now that this is a login attribute or somewhat the username being sent. So should the login attribute should be correctly implemented. So here if I type in suppose any of the username to search, like with the special characters, let's suppose let me type in Kohli at the rate, and if I do a search it says Kohli at the rate not found. Then if I do a single quote, then if I see the result, it is not getting anything, right? And now if I do Kohli single quote, then if I do or, and if I place single quote again, single quote again, 1 equals to 1, and do a search. So this is probably we use you might have seen this is the one. Okay, there is a single quotes at the end, so let me remove this so the application will do a stuff from there end of adding it later on. So here if I send this value and do a search, you would see username admin, password, these details. Admin username is admin, password is this, credit card details. So this is what I was talking about. So we should implement the sanitization checks, validation checks of the special characters. Apart from the username, we should not include any special character. So this has to be done from the development, and we should always look out for such issues, because again the special characters or some kind of escape mechanism. So if I talk about the escape mechanism, like even though the application implemented the sanitization check, there are chances that the attacker may include the escape mechanism, that is slash uh, and provided by the single quotes. So and or slash, so it would look similar to this slash equals slash 1. So this is the slash escape mechanism, wherein even though there is a proper attribute or a proper validation set, it will escape this character and it will search for this. and the results will be published to the attacker. So we should avoid all such kind of thing, and we should always check for the uh, special characters or the uh, unwanted escape mechanisms being present in the application, or this is no not declared properly. So this is all about the insecure authentication, how to check on the login screen or the sign-in screen. What are the methods that you can implement to check using SQL injection or SQL queries? So this is one of the way. Okay, so now if you talk about the prevention methods, so we should ensure that all the authentication requests are performed server side wherever possible, and upon successful authentication, application data will be loaded onto the mobile devices. This will ensure that application data will only be available after successful authentication, right? So only after successful authentication, allow the application to load the content. And if there are any persistent authentication, like remember me functionality, wherever it is implemented within the mobile application, we should never store the user's password on the device, right? We should make sure that the user passwords are not on the device, or else attacker can take those data through different ways of interacting with the mobile devices. Ideally, mobile application should utilize a device specific authentication token that can be revoked within the mobile application by the user. So this will ensure that the application can mitigate unauthorized access from a stolen or lost device. So whenever you feel like the mobile or your mobile is left at a unknown place, or it is stolen or lost, then the mobile application should utilize device specific authentication token, so that the mobile applications or the mobile related data will be safe. Now there is one more thing. When the application, most of the application, you would see there is a 4-digit pin would be set on the authentication process. So it should never encourage to set only for 4-digit pins, and either it should be more than that. So ideally it should be 8-digit pins, so that the brute force, we can actually avoid the brute force techniques, or we should implement rate limiting features. We should also implement account lockout. So these are the ways of the prevention techniques. Now moving on to the insecure authorization. Let's talk about insecure authorization.